Put your hands top of your head.
Well, I didn't.
Now!
Bet your mother had a loud bark.
Good morning. This is Morning Coffee with the Chief. I am your host, Patrick Jordan, retired law enforcement. On this show, we review movies, cop-related movies, with a couple of guests. We talk about our own experiences, and we talk about what's going on today. Now, I have a very exciting show for you guys today because, I have not only a law enforcement guest, but I have an actor that's actually in the movie that we're going to review today. But before we get into the movie, I need to make my pitch for the Los Angeles mission. Now, next week or this month, they're going to be doing the Thanksgiving celebration for the people on Skid Row. The LA mission services the people on Skid Row, and they do a meal with all the trimmings for the people on Skid Row, and they feed a couple thousand people during the course of that day. I've already volunteered, so I'm going to go down there and help feed the homeless. But during this event, they also do outreach. So if you're a homeless person that needs a bed for the day, they'll seek to get you in a bed. If you want to turn your life around and reintegrate society, they have long-term programs, 6 to 12-month programs that you wrap around services, deal with your mental health issues, your drug addiction issues, maybe any educational issues or employment issues you might have. And they link you up with employers that will give you another shot. It is a fantastic organization. It is a faith-based organization, so they don't get any money from government. So their only way of meeting the needs of the homeless is through generous donations from people like you and me. So I'm asking you to look up the losangelesmission.org, go onto their website, make a donation, $25, $50, $100, and help out. They also do a Christmas feeding as well. So we do both of those, but their big one is Thanksgiving, and that's coming up soon. So go to the Los Angeles Mission website, losangelesmission.org, and make a donation and do your good deed for today. So for this, the Morning Coffee with the Chief, you can catch me every Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on YouTube. And if you go on YouTube, make sure you like the show and you make a comment. And of course, you have to subscribe on YouTube. And you can find me on Rumble now. You follow us on Rumble. Again, you like the podcast and make a comment. And I do a lot of commentary on political stuff, and you can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at LASD Jordan. That's Lincoln, Adam, Sam, David, John, Ocean, Robert, David, Adam, Nora. I thought I forgot all that stuff, but I remember the finagles for the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. Anyways, let's get onto our show because I'm really excited about this one. It is the fourth Dirty Harry movie, Sudden Impact. It was. Let me bring on our guest though first, and our first guest, he's been on before, is retired Deputy Michael Ascolese. There's Michael. Hey, Michael.
How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well.
I'm doing very well, sir.
So I say, this is what happens when you promote through the ranks. Everybody calls you sir for the rest of your life. When I was a sergeant, I became sergeant. When I was lieutenant, I became lieutenant. When all the way up, and now here I am, the chief. But you're always a sir to a lot of folks. Mike and I are friends. He can call me Pat or Patrick, and I'd be fine with that. But I'm always.
Oh yes, sir.
See, there we go. Anyways, Mike is retired, and he is a California refugee up in Idaho, I think, right? Is that?
That's correct. Small town right outside of Boise.
Oh, there we go. So he's escaped the high taxes of California. And he's escaped the politics of California. I'm the lone red dot in a sea of blue here, but I am fighting a good fight even though Mike has left. Now, Mike also works with Fueled by the Fallen. Mike, do you want to talk a little bit about that, what that's all about?
Fueled by the Fallen was started by Kevyn Major Howard, who is going to be a guest here today. And it's a nonprofit organization. And it started off with a bunch of muscle cars that displayed the names of all the soldiers killed in Iraq and Afghanistan. So there was cars for each branch of the service. And it's to help everyone remember what they've done for everybody and the ultimate sacrifice they gave. Later, it went into law enforcement cars, including one we had for LA County Sheriff, which had the names of every single officer within the county of Los Angeles killed in the line of duty since 1850. And Kevyn continues this. He has now a series of cars for the 9/11 victims. I'll let him talk about that. They're a beautiful memorial, and they've just been redone. They've been reborn within the last couple of weeks, and I'm sure he'll talk about that. But it's a fantastic opportunity to help people remember the heroes that this country has produced.
And I just found out today, and I hope to do a collaboration with Mike's wife, who has her own podcast called Exception to the Hearsay Rule. And hers, it's the Goldman Law Firm. Is that correct? Goldman Law Firm on YouTube?
Good.
I think it is. Goodman. I'm sorry. Goodman Law Firm on YouTube. So look it up. She's got a couple of videos on there. She's building her presence. And I love the law tube lawyers on there because, here's the thing about the law is when I was watching let's see, what's the Johnny Depp thing and with Amber Heard, and you don't know what the truth is in the mainstream media, but I was able to watch these lawyers talk about the case and get a better perception of what actually happened, and I could come to my own conclusion. Then I won't tell you what that is, but I could come to my own conclusion because I was getting quality legal analysis of the case. Same with the Rittenhouse case. So I do enjoy the YouTube because you get what the mainstream media wants, not what the actual facts of the case are, if you just listen to mainstream media. But on these LawTube programs, you get an opinion from a lawyer who looks at it from an analytical standpoint based upon the law. Okay, enough said on Mike and his wife. Let's bring on our next guest, and that is Kevyn Major Howard, who actually, as we get into the show, he starred in this movie Sudden Impact. His presence on the movie ended suddenly. And, and as I did my research on Kevyn Major Howard, I found out, and it's an awesome legacy that he was killed by 3 A-listers in three different productions out of Hollywood. He was in this movie. He's killed by Clint Eastwood. He's also killed by Charles Bronson in Death Wish 2, right? And then he's in a Magnum PI series. He's killed by Frank Sinatra. That is a legacy there, Kevyn. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Chief. Good morning, Deputy Mike Ascolese. How are you both?
Well, I'm doing well, and since Mike brought up Fueled by the Fallen, he's got it under his name there, and you're the founder. You want to talk a little bit about your inspiration for it, and then how people can help?
I was invited to do the film Full Metal Jacket with Mr. Kubrick. I got a chance to play a Marine, and for 17 months played that Marine in that film. I had returned back to the United States from filming in England and was invited to 29 Palms for a performance of a silent drill in my honor, I suppose. And watching these boys and girls on the field, it brings up a tremendous amount of emotion. And I then asked for a tour around the base and found myself gazing upon a beautiful marble monument. Began to read it. It was a story about a 19-year-old boy who jumped on a grenade for his men and women in the battlefield and saved their lives, paying the ultimate sacrifice himself. His name was Torrey L. Gray, and Fallujah. And I walked away from that experience realizing I had to do something to honor him. First was I found myself not remembering anybody's names, and I thought, well, maybe America is going through this same kind of complacency, and how do I challenge that? and I had a 1963 Chevrolet Nova quarter mile race car, and I decided to use that car as my canvas to paint that storyline. A few months later, I arrived at 29 Palms to bring it home, and there were Marines, plenty of them, 2,000 plus, enjoying a big and rich concert. And in comes this car rumbling with its fantastic race engine, displaying 864 names of our Marines. I was hoping I was on the right page, a little nervous, but as we came around the bend and we came upon their grounds at 29 Palms, every Marine stood up once he had gazed upon her and stood and saluted their comrades, their heroes, their fallen. And I was invited to the stage to have a conversation, and it continued with, I'm not going to stop here just building the Marines. I will perform this task with every branch of service, and became the 3 police cruisers I have, a national cruiser, 2 national cruisers, and 1 for LA Sheriff's County, which Deputy Mike Ascolese was privileged us with the experience of helping him build that for his city worker. And so it began, and then it became 5 911 Angel Tribute Camaros, outfitted with light bars and push guards, that told the story of that tragic, fateful day in America. And I've often believed this, Chief and Mike, you know this. I don't believe any child can walk into their future if they don't know their history. And I thought this was the best way that I can examine that history for them, that they could see it daily on their city streets, small towns, and traveled across America 3 different times already.
Well, I want to thank you for doing that. I do believe, one of the things that I like about LAPD's Twitter thing is they put out regularly posts of their officers that have passed away, and a little bit of their story on how it happened. And heck, I probably will talk about one of those today. And it's also one of the reasons why I do podcasting, is to remind people what happened the last 40 years in law enforcement, because it's kind of gets skewed in mainstream media, what we did and what we went through over the last 40 years. And, I guess we should probably talk about the movie because it blends into this. The movie is Sudden Impact, and it was released in 1983. It is it's the 4th in the Dirty Harry series.
Right.
And it stars obviously Clint Eastwood and Sandra Locke. I guess Clint Eastwood's love interest in the movie, and off the screen as well for a while, anyways. And one of the things the thing about these Dirty Harry movies, and certainly you guys can chime in, is we came in 1980 was the highest number of homicides per 100,000 in California. I think it ran about 14 per 100,000. And then 93, it dipped for a little bit and then peaked again in 93 at 13.1 homicides per 100,000. So that period in the late 70s, early 80s, and into the 90s was incredibly violent. Just to give you context, in 2014 in California, we were down to 4.4 murders per 100,000. We're back up to about 6.8. Our blessed policies of criminal justice reform don't seem to be working. But the Dirty Harry series, in my mind, captured people's frustration with crime, and they just wanted this anti-hero just to do something to keep their community safe. And I think that's why these movies were so popular then. And what do you think, Kevin? You think I'm onto something there?
I think you are. We live in a land that's eroded tremendously in today's culture, I think. But I having worked with Mr. Eastwood on that film, and I understand your point. There is a vigilante kind of offering by him and Charles Bronson, one of his other film icons. That Death Wish 2 is the film I did with him, and you get a real glimpse of that vigilante kind of style of retribution. I was brought up in Canada. We didn't have an awful lot of this going on when I was growing up, and it certainly was an eye opener to see it happening before your eyes. Living in Los Angeles for 40 years myself. So yeah, you are onto something.
I grew up in Detroit, and I don't share my stories of growing up, but let's just say I was exposed to a lot more, a lot sooner than most of the folks that I joined the sheriff's department with. And anyways, Mike, what do you think of my analysis? You think this is I'm right on that Clint just kind of hit Dirty Harry just kind of hit a chord with the public about crime?
Very, very much so. I mean, and the fact that he even went to 4 films. This is also the first film of Dirty Harry that Clint directed. So he's got a character that's not only dynamic, he's hysterical. If you listen to his one-liners, I mean, he does them so serious, but he's very funny. And he was what we needed at that time.
And we're going to get into it, but let me lay out, Kevin. I needed a little bit of your bio going here, or at least the stuff you were featured in as an actor, so people can go and look at those vehicles as well. You were in Chips, right? You were in Death Wish 2, which you just talked about. What was the character name in Death Wish 2?
It was Stomper.
Stomper.
Yep. And
Okay,
funny enough with Stomper, we did that film, but Stomper became a cult figure that year, and a couple years, people began to imitate him, dress like him for Halloween, and he really he got the attention of a lot of people back then. I remember there was a front page of the calendar of the LA Times, and a friend of mine phoned up and said, "You've got to run down to your newspaper stand and grab it." And I did, and there was a picture of Stomper and a picture of Charles Bronson, smaller, but it said the new Screen Avenger of the 1980s. He's blonde, blue-eyed, and a killer. And it was an incredible character to play. It had not yet been seen in that style on screen, and I was one of the people that probably helped Road Warrior become a look itself. Stomper was quite a character.
Well, too bad. You should have copyrighted that likeness, right? And got the T-shirt royalties, right?
Right.
You'd be Che Guevara, right? You'd still be showing it, right?
Right. I never had a business mind. I was only an artist.
Oh, well, I mean, we all have our failings, right? But you were also in T.J. Hooker with oh my God, I'm losing a blank. Kirk.
William Shatner.
William Shatner. That's right.
Yes.
Cagney and Lacey. Now, I think was it Lacey that appeared in one of the Dirty Harry movies, right?
I forget. It was Tyne Daly.
Tyne Daly. She was in. Yeah. She got
He
shot,
and
I think she did a pretty good. I liked her character in that, and we talked about it. They were supposed to have it's supposed to be love interest in the movie, but she pushed back on that and said it really wasn't realistic. And I think she did a pretty good job of portraying a female cop in a masculine environment. Say it again?
Was Charlie Sheen also in that film?
No, I don't remember. No. You know who else? I think this was the one where the guy was running the big chase. You know what? Meathead was in it. God, I'm losing. He was Meathead on
Rob Reiner.
Bunker. Yeah, just briefly. You had to, as the suspect bumped into him as he was running away, and but yeah, she was in that one. Then you were in Scarface as an extra. You were in Sudden Impact, which we're going to see here in a minute as we move through. You're on the A Team. Roadhouse 66 as Dink. Did you play a hood in that one as well?
I did. That was with Willem Dafoe and Judge Reinhold, Alan Autry as well. Really good cast. We were about to just hit some really good stride, but that was the film just before that moment.
Got it. All right. And well, I'll have to look up that one too. And because if you're up to it, we'll do Death Wish 2 here. I just got to do Death Wish 1 as well. Then you were Magnum PI, and this is the one where you were killed by Frank Sinatra. This episode,
yes,
which I thought was really cool when you sent me your actor reel there. And Full Metal Jacket, which is as Rafter Man, that's probably your premiere role, right?
Yes.
Everybody remembers you from that one. Yeah. And it's interesting. Lieutenant Dan, I forget the actor's name.
Gary Sinise.
Gary Sinise also began to raise money for, or at least honor our vets.
Yes.
After his appearing as Lieutenant Dan in Forrest Gump, right? And then we have War Party. Are you a bad guy in War Party as well?
I ended up being that bad guy. Yes. You know, that's probably why I work
Blonde hair,
so
blue-eyed bad guys. I
right,
mean, what's
right.
up here?
I work so much simply because drama needs that conflict, and I was that conflict. So
You were the
all
conflict.
good.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Well, no, hey, you know what? If you made some money out of it, it is all
Yeah.
good because there's a lot of starving actors and actresses, right? Then Alien Nation, Miami Vice, Cityscapes Los Angeles as Sean. Is that what is that?
Cityscapes was done by a gentleman by the name of Michael Becker, directed it. We have the Beastie Boys in it. Some of the Bangles, I believe, were in it. Timothy Leary. I know you guys remember
Oh,
Timothy
Timothy Leary.
Leary, the Acid King,
Drop in, drop out, or drop.
right?
Yeah,
Right.
something like that.
Max Perlich. Just some good, awesome careers that lent themselves to a filmmaker, Michael Becker, who I think is underestimated. I think he's one of the better filmmakers. I'm waiting for his next piece to come out, but truly a gem of a film, truly.
So, Kevin, I took my kids, this was like 20 years ago, I was working at Universal Studios, so it might have actually been a little bit long. And Al Jarreau was playing, and they didn't
Love
sell
it.
out, so they gave a bunch of tickets to the deputies who worked up there, and I took my wife and my kids at the time, and they were like, I don't know, 9 or 10, whatever, um, and Al Jarreau's talking about LPs, and one of my kids looked over at me and said, "What's an LP?"
Right, right.
What's an LP, Dad? You know, and so when you say Timothy Leary, you assume we know because you're
Yep.
looking at the gray and the wrinkles and the little sagging here, and you
Uh,
know that we know. But you know, it's funny how much. I mean, even just a rotary phone, they might not know that. They don't know what an LP is. It's
yeah.
completely different. Your experience is completely different than the modern age. And anyway, so when you said, "Oh, you guys will know Timothy Leary," probably because you just see the
Yeah.
lines in their face and you
Yeah.
assume that, right? And your last one was livers ain't cheap as a paramedic, and
Yeah. That was with and a gentleman I really wanted to work with, um, James Russo, and I just think he's an awesome, awesome talent, and I just wanted to work with him so desperately. So I jumped in on that particular film. I've never seen it myself, but there's an awful lot I haven't seen that I've done, and it goes back to Jimmy Stewart. You know, Jimmy Stewart. Could you imagine that Jimmy Stewart never saw "It's a Wonderful Life"? Any of his
that's
films. He never watched any of his films. He was just simply there to do the job, do the work, and he moved on. He didn't want to. He didn't want to reflect.
well, it's I probably seen It's a Wonderful Life, 20 times because it's a holiday
Absolutely.
mainstay. You find it, you watch it, get a cup of cocoa or whatever, and watch the angel get his wings.
Yeah.
So
And every time a bell rings, for those who don't know, every time you hear a bell ring, that is an angel getting his wings. It's one of my favorite films, like yourself, Chief.
yeah, well, so I do appreciate you joining us. I'm hoping that you'll add some different context because we always talk about law enforcement in these contexts of these movies, and you can give a little bit of the movie context and and some of the other folks in here, just because I looked at the cast and Albert Popwell is in this. Now he has been in every single Dirty Harry movie, and he plays his partner here and gets killed, but he plays Horace King as his partner. I like the guy. He's pretty good. He's the bad guy in the first one that that says, "Well, do you feel lucky, punk?" That famous
Right?
line that Clint Eastwood utter, and he's pointing his empty 44 at him. Of course, he doesn't know
Yep.
it's empty, and then Clint drops the hammer on an empty casing and chuckles. It
Eating a
was
hot dog
empty,
too, I think. Right?
huh?
He was eating a hot dog at that moment.
Yeah, he comes out. Yeah, and they kind of have a now this one deviated from the formula. The first three are pretty. They introduce Clint. They have some kind of violent scene where Clint coolly takes care of the bad guys. They always have some kind of over the top sex scene. This one, they deviated a little bit from the formula, and I think part of that was to give Sandra Locke a greater presence, but I don't know that for sure. I'm just assuming that. But he's in there. But also, okay, you guys all remember the coming of age story, Porky's, right?
Hmm.
So Nancy
Yes.
Parsons is in here now. This is the whatever the muscular lady who goes after the young teenage boys in high school. Clearly
Ballbreaker.
politically incorrect today. I forget her name. The character she played
Ballbreaker.
a ball breaker, right? Yeah, and it's a very politically incorrect movie these days. But she was in it, and she plays the first guy that is killed. She plays his wife, and basically is not a nice person. But she's in the movie. Kevin, anybody else in the movie that you want to mention?
Off the top of my head, the elevator scene where I do that work. I don't remember the actor's name at this point, but I love him dearly. He was a comedian and did very well in stand-up. I want to say Steve, I just don't know his last name. I can't remember it. It's been years since I've seen this film. But yeah, he's a tremendous talent as well. And there are a few other people that Steve.
Okay. Well, we'll have to look him up, see if we can't find him. Mike, go ahead, Mike.
My favorite, and there was a lot of actors in here that did a lot of Eastwood movies. My favorite was on the elevator scene, Cameron Manheim. And there's no credit. She has no credit in the film, but that was her first bit. And I've always loved her as an actress. She's fantastic. And you see her quite a bit on that elevator scene, but that's who it was.
A lot of people have mentioned this, and thanks for bringing it up. I just didn't know her name.
I think.
Go ahead.
I think the name you're looking for is Steven Kravitz.
Yes,
Steve Kravitz.
Kravitz. My goodness, this man! I love this guy. I love him also as a really terrific actor. But when Clint throws me back across the elevator after grabbing my tie and having his personalized conversation with this
Pile.
Right. Throws me back into Steve Kravitz, and I stepped on Steve Kravitz's foot so hard, and you'll watch him wince in the film. It's just genius a moment. Please, when you get a chance to watch it again, watch Steve Kravitz's face. It's just a gem.
I know we're going to get into that scene, but Clint is so much taller than you. I did actually not necessarily met Clint. We were at his bar, and he was having tea and toast at the bar. I was there with a bunch of senior executives attending the Naval Postgraduate School for Homeland Defense and Security. So I was in the terrorism gig for a while, and the ladies in the class, one of them was a captain in the Coast Guard. Let's go to Clint's place, and he happened to be there. So tall guy. All right, let's get into the show here. We got to start running our show here, and the first one is the lovers. See, I call it lovers, not. So it looks like they're at a lover's lane, and it ends up it's not a lover's lane. And this is it kind of launches the what's going on here in the movie. Sandra Locke plays. You find out later that she plays the killer in this scene, and she is exacting revenge on somebody who did her wrong about a decade earlier. But it starts out. It looks like just a lover's lane scene in the Bay Area, just overlooking the bay there. And she has an interesting way of killing this guy, and it's a pattern that she develops: first the groin, then the head. So G&H, right, groin and head, and shots, and she takes him out. Did you get a chance to meet Sandra Locke on set, Kevin?
I did, and she's a very lovely person, and I know that her and Clint have a tremendous history offset in their personal life, and I miss her. I got a chance to meet her, and I also got a chance to meet Charles Bronson's lovely lady, Jill Ireland. And so, yeah, there's been quite a few of the wives that I've so-called wives, girlfriends that I've met, and just part of my repertoire, I suppose.
What's to say? Pattern is where they always screw up. Yeah, that's true. If you're investigating crime, we look at modus operandi and patterns to solve the crime, and Clint does do that. He does recognize that when he ends up going out of town and in another area. But I like Sandra Locke, and she was in the movie. Oh God, was it Pale Rider? No, it wasn't. No, it was Josie Wales, the outlaw Josie Wales. That's where I remember her from. I think that was in the mid-'70s that movie came out. It was probably one of my favorite Clint Eastwood movies as well. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, she did Outlaw Josie Wales. She did The Gauntlet, Every Which Way But Loose, Any Which Way You Can, and Bronco Billy. So she did quite a bit with Clint Eastwood.
Yeah.
Yeah. I as I watched the movie, clearly he gave her a vehicle to advance her career in this movie, and that's fine. She did a good job. I enjoyed the show. I would have liked a little more quips from Clint and a little more of that stuff, but that would have been the flavor of the first three movies. So he was introducing his lady, which is, I guess, fine with me. And so this moves on to this next scene that we want to talk about. I just wrote it as Kevin. So this is the
Okay.
court scene when you're waiting for Clint to come in. Of course, he's late, and it was interesting how you can see the judge has in this scene. She despises Clint Eastwood, and it's funny when I was working in West Hollywood, we went to Beverly Hills Court for our cases, as Mike can attest to. And in Beverly Hills Court, you dealt with a lot of private attorneys. And some of the other places we go to, it's almost all public defenders. But in Beverly Hills Court, you had some high profile attorneys, but you also had judges who had relationships with those attorneys. And every now and then, some technicality came up, and the judges for the most part liked the deputy, so it wasn't this antagonist kind of thing. But they'd find some reason to get somebody off. The one I remember the most is de minimis amount of methamphetamine, so we're going to reject the filing. And but in this case, this scene, she kind of goes after Clint, and says it was an illegal search, illegal that, illegal this. And well, we got, hey lady, thank you for coming with us, and it still feels like Monday. Well, it is Tuesday, and welcome to the show. But she obviously dismisses this, and and I really want to talk a little bit about this. Law enforcement was changing. We came out of the 70s, and there was a great many laws that changed and a great many expectations placed upon law enforcement, and the rules were changing. So the rules change as you go along, and suddenly something is considered an illegal search, and you may have done it 100 times, but this judge finds it as an illegal search. And so she, of course, dismisses the case. And there you are, very happy, very smile, very happy. And this actually leads up to the elevator scene, right? So I think we're going to go right into the elevator scene. So, Mike, did you get that experience at Beverly Hills Court that sometimes your cases got dismissed and really bogus dismissals?
The one thing I did notice there, and I'm not going to use the judge's name, but there was one particular judge who didn't like my training officer. And that personal bias came out a few times. And in fact, I was actually pulled into chambers one time, and she spoke to me and warned me about him. And when I explained his situation, she changed her mind drastically. She didn't realize the issues around him that she thought were of a darker nature. They weren't. He had some personal stuff. And I saw her change towards him, but I was surprised because I was young that someone who's supposed to be, blind justice, she definitely wasn't. And
so here is Kevin getting in, he's having a conversation with Clint, smart aleck. It probably would have been a lot more R-rated today, the smart aleck comment. It was pretty, probably avoiding negative ratings here, but this is the dog shit conversation, right?
Yeah, this is it. I found myself in Greece getting ready for Full Metal Jacket, just doing a little bit of traveling. But it was probably the last time I ever wore a shirt and tie. I got onto an elevator, and there was a boyfriend and girlfriend standing in the side of the elevator. We began to climb up, ascend, and all of a sudden I felt his hand grab my tie, and it was not the guy. It was the girl, and she did Clint Eastwood's monologue brilliantly. She wouldn't let go in her face. So, yeah, to her, whoever she is, if you're listening, I loved it. Thank you so much for the moment. And here I am bragging about it.
Okay, there you can see Steve's face.
There you go. There you go.
So that's when he's getting his foot stepped on.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's some realism, right?
Yeah.
I want to ask about the boxing or the positioning. So an elevator, I mean, you look like you're in an elevator. How do they do that? And obviously it's open door, the cameras are in there, but just frame the scene for us.
It's an interesting, I mean, Mr. Eastwood is so genius at what he does on film. He keeps it very efficient. We only did 2 takes, and his comment was after the first take, let's do a second take just in case there's dust in the gates. But it's a confined space, but you would never have known that there were, 3 of us Mr. Eastwood, the lady, and his lawyer, and then a camera person as well. We never felt confined to that space. I look back at that and I think, how did you do that with such simplicity and make it feel and look as authentic as an elevator can be? So yeah, he's a visionary. You know, I've often said about Mr. Eastwood and also of Stanley Kubrick, these are two gentlemen who have graced planet Earth with their awesome talent. And if we could clone two individuals, that would be my choice, Mr. Eastwood and Mr. Kubrick. What resumes they do have, and the fact that the good Lord put these resumes in their lives and that they fulfilled them as well as they have, quite an accomplishment on both of them. And so, yeah, I miss Mr. Kubrick as well.
So you were basically in a box, right? Or it
Yes.
felt like that,
Yes.
and so it's just tight, but it wasn't. It's just a stage elevator, right? That's what it's made to
No,
look
it
like.
wasn't. It was actually the elevator. It was not a stage elevator.
Oh,
It was,
wow.
yeah, it was the real deal. That's what I mean. You know, to have that many people and a camera crew inside of it, you would think that we'd get in each other's way, and yet that didn't occur. So, yeah, real deal.
You know, it's one of the things I wanted to ask you about is you went to act, or you did acting. Did you go to acting school at all?
I did. I studied with a gentleman by the name of Alan. Oh my God, why am I I've gotten this old, guys. That's what's
Yeah,
happening.
yeah. That's
Alan
happening.
Landers. Alan Landers. And I was studying at Sherwood Oaks College originally on the corner of Hollywood and Vine,
Yeah.
Ivar, actually. And I was summoned back to Canada because my father was getting ready to pass away. And I left acting class at Sherwood Oaks College. By the way, I believe Jay Leno went there, a few of us. But I had left, gone back to my father, and he passed away. I was immobilized at that point for 4 months. And this acting coach, Alan Landers, called me. He found me in Canada somehow. And he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, you know, my dad and I'm dealing with it." And he said, "I need you to come back to Los Angeles. I've started a new acting class. I want you to be a part of this class." We had Paul Newman's kids in that. We had Mick Jagger's wife. We had Greg Evigan, BJ and the Bear, and so forth and so on. And all these kids, these were the jet-setting crowd of LA. They would show up in Rolls Royces. They would show up in their Ferraris, and a different one every week. And here I was among them as a young actor, and George Maharis, one of the great artists, Route 66, was also one of the guests who I latched onto, and he helped mentor me in my career. So yeah, I did go to acting class for quite a few years. Ended up studying with Milton Casellas. And enough about me, guys. Come on.
Well, I asked that for two reasons. I am curious, but we had a Lee Strasberg Theater or whatever acting
Yes.
thing just outside
Yes.
of our area, West Hollywood.
Yep.
And the area right there, Highland and Santa Monica, was also a great place for catching dope dealers and other nefarious people, right? So we used,
Yep.
and it's LAPD's area, so you would go down there, scoot down there to see who's who in the zoo, and if they came into West Hollywood, you would arrest them, right? But every now and then, you know, amongst these bad actors, you'd see these people kind of having a conversation or whatever they were doing, and every now and then I jammed them up, and they were actors from the studio practicing their lines,
Yeah,
whatever they
practicing
were.
lines, walking the streets, becoming those characters.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
one of them. I did a play at Hollywood and Highland. Santa Monica and Highland, and it was based on a character that you see sometimes walking down Santa Monica Boulevard, doing tricks.
Yeah,
You know, and so yeah, I get that picture.
So 30 years later, I was overseeing some programming for inmates, and we decided to bring in some acting class, some folks that do classes for the inmates so they can do some scenes, right? So they asked me to come and do a presentation. So here I end up in front of, like, I don't know, 40 actors, and I have to do this 20-minute presentation to them and just talk to them. And they videotape it. I'm like, and I'm not a bad public speaker. So, but I thought, okay, well, this will be fun. So I ended up telling that story about how I used to jam actors, these starving actors, as they were practicing their starter line, because they were doing it amongst all the prostitutes and dope dealers and whatnot. And they got a kick out of that.
Yep.
It ended up being a pretty good experience. And we did bring them in for a couple of seasons, and they did acting classes for the inmates. So it was pretty cool. But
I
go ahead.
got to share this one little story. I apologize. But just imagine it's a Sunday afternoon. It's Commerce Casino. I'm playing poker, and all of a sudden, 14 police cars come blasting into the front doors. Lights are burning, and 2 officers are standing on either side of me, asking me to stand up and go with them. And I go, "Excuse me, what's going on here? Come with us." Okay. And I go to grab my chips, and they go, "Leave the chips." Now their guns are drawn on just laying down by their right leg and left leg. And they say, "Come with us." And I get up and I start to walk with them. And I'm curious as what's going on here. We walk by the front door. I see all these police cars lit and burning. And they walk me into a security office. And there's probably I felt like 14 other new police officers standing there. And they put me in handcuffs. And I go, "What is it? What's going on here, people?" And they said, "Shut up." And I went, "Okay." Now I'm beginning to sweat and I'm beginning to think what's really going on. And I go to ask again with my courteous level attitude. And I was told to remain quiet. And eventually the question was answered. "You're wanted for murder." I went, "What? What?" And then because you're in this surreal situation, you're questioning, like, where have I been? What's going on? Did I black out? What are they talking about? Etc. Every question pops into your mind. And then all of a sudden, about 15 minutes in, and I am pouring sweat, a gentleman walks up to me in the room who's just entered the room. And he walks up to me and he whispers in my right ear. He says, "Are you an actor?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Full Metal Jacket?" And I said, "Yes." And he laughed and he said, "Get these cuffs off this kid." As it turned out, a lady at the casino that Sunday had just finished watching back to back Full Metal Jacket and America's Most Wanted and got me confused. I'll tell you, though, you scared the hell out of me, guys.
Oh, fantastic. That's a great story.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to go into an iconic scene, and this is called Acorn Cafe. And this is usually a signature scene for Dirty Harry, is some kind of violent act that, Harry calmly resolves. And in this case, he goes to his regular cafe to get his regular cup of coffee, and the waitress is pouring a lot of sugar in there. And there's a couple of lines that come out of the scene that I really like, but and Harry's not really paying attention, which, I would say that's a failure on his part, because normally you're supposed to be paying attention to what's going on if you're a cop, because they all knew he was a cop. And, I was drilled in me. You got a target on your back. You got to keep your head on a swivel. You need to be looking around. But it works with the scene here. And he gets his cup of coffee and he goes out and he comes back. And the scene is going to progress here. But there's two lines that come out of the scene as he goes back in and he confronts the bad guys is who's we? Like he says, "Hey, we're not going to let you go anywhere." He says, "Who's we?" Well, it's Smith, Wesson, and me. Now, the thing about his first movie was "Go Ahead, Punk, Make My Day." There are certain phrases that just get out there in pop culture, and this is Pop Culture Minefield, the show, and that was one of them, right? And from the original Dirty Harry. And it was also something that kind of invaded law enforcement, the culture of law enforcement. "Go ahead and make my day." And one of my buddies worked in Detroit. He carried a 44 long Colt, right? I mean, so there's and just what you were able to carry at work became very important, right? And so Clint Eastwood's character, Dirty Harry, did influence law enforcement, even if they just used these words. And it was the same thing with Smith, Wesson, and me. We used to carry Smith and Wessons. That's when I started, right? So I thought that was an iconic line. Mike, what do you think? You agree?
He always had great lines. Yeah. "Go ahead, make my day." And the other one that he kept saying in this movie more often was "swell." Every time something went bad. Oh,
well, Marvelous was the last show. Swell didn't quite catch on, but I think Smith, Wesson, and me, for guys who carried guns, that resonated, right? And I'm sure it's on T-shirts somewhere. I should have looked. And then, of course, as they get into shooting, he ends up shooting all the bad guys, taking them out. Now, which is it is, if you ever been around a shooting, and I've just a few, and they go very quickly. So the ability to hit 4 different targets, because he hits all 4 of them with 6 shots, is pretty darn good. But it is Dirty Harry, and he's our hero. He's able to do that stuff. Hey, lady, thank you for visiting the show. Eastwood's epic catchphrases, yes. And he says one of these pretty soon, and this is after he shoots them all. And one of them is still alive. He's got a hostage, and he tells him, "Make my day. Go ahead, make my day." That became another iconic line, probably very close to, if not exceeding, "Go ahead, punk, make my day," right? Or no, "Go ahead, punk. Do you feel lucky? Do you feel lucky, punk?" In the first movie.
Yeah.
So, and this also fits with all of his previous movies, Kevin. I don't know if you ever a chance to watch all of his previous movies, but this is the kind of scene that kind of sets up who Harry is.
The very first film my father ever took me to, it was a 2 o'clock afternoon matinee during a school day. He had walked into my class. He had said to my teacher, "I'm taking Kevin out of school today. We're going to go do some business." And I was surprised. I found myself sitting beside him in a theater going, and he looked at me and he said, "Son, I'm teaching you today. It's not always about work. It's about understanding the balance of play as well." And we began to sit in the front of this theater, this screen, and up and behold, on the screen was Shirley MacLaine and Clint Eastwood. The first film I ever enjoyed with my father, Two Mules for Sister Sarah.
Sister Sarah, yeah,
And,
great movie.
It's funny. It's funny, Chief and Deputy. Your father, one of my best loves of my life. I miss you, Dad. But the fact that I ended up working with Clint Eastwood, a figurehead that my father absolutely enjoyed himself. So, yeah, it's funny how destiny plays itself.
We had a comment about Mike Ascolese, so I just need to let you guys know that Mike's wife is doing her podcast in their studio, and so Mike got relegated to the guest bedroom. So he's laying on his bed as he does the podcast, which makes him look like he's just too cool for school here. And the lady has mentioned that she's thinking he's got some a-hole sarcasm. Mike wasn't. That's not the Mike I know. Mike was, he could have to. He did what he had to do on the streets, but he was generally a GP kind of guy on the streets.
Now, what is GP?
General populate or general audience, right? What GP for or G? What is it for when not PG?
PG.
I'm sorry, PG. I'm sorry, PG. There we go. Yeah. And when I was on the streets, I was generally PG, unless I was whispering in somebody's ear. Then I wasn't always PG, and that was to convince people to go along. But I love this scene because it sets who Dirty Harry is. Cool, unflappable. It sets up his one-liners, and he takes out all the bad guys. And this is the anti-hero everybody loves, right, Mike?
Correct. We were talking about the "Go Ahead, Make My Day." It's interesting when Eastwood ran for mayor of Carmel. The bumper stickers that he put out were "Go ahead, make me mayor." That's really a great way to twist it.
It's I did my own little research, and I appreciate Mike coming on the show because he does pretty good research. And Ronald Reagan used the line when he wanted to do vetoes, right? And I'll tell this story just because it was one of the more important days of my career. Most people might not think it's a big deal. But I was a lieutenant, and I was charged with writing the security plan for Ronald Reagan if he passed away, and he was still alive, So I write the security plan, and it's for when he passes away. They were going to hold him in state at the library, the Ronald Reagan Library in Simi Valley, and they were going to stage where people could line up to go to the theater at Moorpark College, which was not too far away. And there's a lot of logistics that go with that. We were doing the policing for the LA Metro, and Ventura's transit system just wasn't big enough to handle it. So they asked LA to step in. So I organized with Secret Service the security. And I was honored to do it because he was, as I came of age politically, he was the guy running. And I really believed in his message. I still do. And I liked the way he handled himself as a politician. I wish some of the guys today could take lessons from him on how to do that. And I was a fan, and so he passed away, and I was still there, so I got to execute that plan. And uh, I worked with the Reagan family while we were doing the planning. I worked with the Reagan Library, we were doing the planning, and when it was all over with, I got a nice letter from Nancy Reagan, and I got a postcard from Nancy Reagan of thank you. I got a poster, Operation Serenity, which is what it was called, of Ronnie Reagan, and then I got one of the prayer cards. So that if you look at my house, it's the only paraphernalia from work that I hung on the walls. Since I've gotten married, my wife has put a little bit more stuff around, but that's I'm most proud of that stuff, and I have boxes of the stuff in the garage, and so that's kind of my Ronnie Reagan, and the fact that he used it, which doesn't surprise me, that he would use it in sending a message to Congress. Go ahead, make my day. I'm going to veto it. Right? That's so great line. Part of pop culture, probably our generation, less of the newer generation, but it also sets up who Clint is. Right? So I don't know if you guys got a Reagan story. That's mine. And anyways, let's go into the next scene, and it's the old mobster scene now. So Clint has, or Dirty Harry has, many ways of solving his problem and just harassing these guys to shake it loose. And homicide guys do that. They put pressure on suspects to maybe shake some loose. And this suspect, and now this guy, he was in. He's a famous character actor. He was in The Godfather 2, I believe.
Yep.
And there he is, right there. And I think he was fantastic in Godfather 2. This is the guy who was going to testify. He thought Michael Corleone had turned on him. He was going to testify, and they tried to kill him. And ultimately, Michael brought in his brother as he's beginning to testify from the old country, Michael Corleone, and the guy did not testify. And then how does he get himself out of this? Tom Hagen, who, the character in the movie, talks about how the old Romans, just kind of open their wrists in a bath, right? Which is what this guy ends up doing. I really liked him as a character actor, and he's in this show. And it really, the accusation is that he was too close to a high price call girl. She got some information, or they thought she had some information that was detrimental to him in terms of prosecution, and he killed her, right? That's what the accusation, Clint is saying, that he's killed her. And then Clint lays this allegation out in front of his family, and he has a heart attack in the family. And I wanted to talk about the scene because there's so many great character actors. And Kevin, you kind of played a character actor here, and these are important positions in films because it just adds texture, right?
Yeah, it does. I'm watching the screen and I'm seeing some of the clips you're playing, and what fabulous faces on these talents that we've all grown up with and we see often in other films. And it's just tremendous to look back at your world and realize you're part of it. And just thank you very much, Chief, for having me on your show today. Really, truly, it's a retrospect, and I'm very flattered.
Well, I will say, and certainly Mike can jump in on this one. There's some good movies coming out, but I'm not, there's way too much shooting and car crashing, and there's less drama and contours developed by actors and actresses to tell these stories. And I know those are exciting. I mean, even the what are they, the whole superhero stuff, and it's the human condition is really played out when humans are interacting, and if it's done well on in the movie or even on television, it makes it much more interesting. And Clint Eastwood is telling the story here, Dirty Harry's story here, and in this case, it's the social realities of the day, and his role as the anti-hero and dealing with them. And they need all these character actors to kind of shape that environment. But I just, as I look for movies to review, I like these older movies because they were just iconic, and they did help shape our popular culture.
Yeah, it took artists to make yesteryear's movies. I mean, they couldn't rely on anything but their talent on the set. They didn't have special effects and CGI and fast editing and move the camera this way and quickly this way. And, you know, the James Cagney of yesteryear, the Clint Eastwood.
Yes.
He came up in that breadth of filmmaking. And so today we do have a lot of lost film. We spend our attention span is so little, and we aren't reminded of the human condition in today's films like we were in yesteryears. The Cary Grants, the Jimmy Stewarts, the James Cagneys, the Eastwoods, the Newmans, the McQueens. These were storytelling artists, and we've lost that fever. Yeah, I agree.
And you know, Mike doesn't know this, so I'm going to put something out there that so when I was in high school, I did competitive speaking, but it's a different kind of they called it forensics. And so yes, they had impromptu speeches and they had kind of debate type categories, but you could also do drama and comedy. And the one that I excelled at was multiple. So you had multiple actors or competitors because you competed against other schools. And so I was playing football, and one of the football coaches did both. He did football and competitive speaking, and he pulled a bunch of us jocks. Said, "Hey, come on, and we're going to do a multiple in forensics." So we're like, forensics, whatever, All right, we'll do it, whatever. So we did it, and we decided to put as much effort into. Not the first time around, we sucked. We were terrible, but we put as much effort into competitive speaking as we put into the sport we were in, and we ended up winning the state of Michigan. We won the Catholic League for the state of Michigan for our multiple. It was believe it or not, it was comedy. So I do understand, the line, delivering the line, the blocking, and all that other stuff. That is an art, and that's a discipline. And if you're doing everything right, nobody notices that, right? You just look like you're the character. And so I have just a little bit of experience in that, of course, completely just juvenile in comparison to your experience there, Kevin. But so I like the old character actors, and the context of the older movies. So the next scene, let's see what time we got. We are coming up on a break. We'll do one more scene and then we'll go to a break. But I wanted to talk a few more comments. This is the Godfather character, and his comment, his quip, and this is one of the things I like about Dirty Harry is his quips. And we get in trouble in regular law enforcement when you say quips. What happened? And his comment was, "Well, he must have seen the bill, right? That's why he had a heart attack." Probably when I first started, you can kind of say those things, but now you can't say those things because then you get in trouble. There's a disrespect kind of category for complaints, and I have to admit I had to discipline guys for. You get a chuckle with what they say sometimes. But
Mike's breaking up here.
Yeah, I'm sure Mike has got a few.
Share, Mike, share.
I identified as a dead guy.
And what?
Say that again?
I identified as a dead guy. I had a heart attack,
You identified as that. Yeah. So, we have these guys would make quippy remarks. I mean, I had one guy, he was, his last name kind of rhymed with rude. And this lady came in and she says, "I want to make a complaint against Deputy Rude." I said, "Well, we don't have a Deputy Rude." "Well, that's what he should be called because he's just rude, And so, and now we have the body worn cameras, and you can see everything. I have to tell you, I told that Deputy Rude to carry a tape recorder on for all of his citations, and suddenly his tone got better, and I got a lot less complaints. But yeah, so and he goes to the scene where the murder happened, and the comment was, "Oh, he got a 38 caliber vasectomy," which also another great quip for this show, right? So just some good writing, and I like the good writing, And he, of course, he meets up with Horace somewhere during the movie. We don't do every scene, Kevin, so I'm kind of filling everybody in. But he gets called a dinosaur. You're a legend in your own mind. That was another quip that came from this movie that I heard in law enforcement, where people would say this about other people. That guy's a legend in his own mind, particularly somebody they didn't like, right? And he kind of says this. He's having an argument with the captain, and he says that to him. "You're a legend in your own mind." So I just love these quips that Harry has, and there's other movies that I like. Like, I don't know if you've ever seen L.A. Confidential. Little quips like that are in L.A. Confidential, and a lot of those neo-noir kind of. I just did Mulholland Falls with Nick Nolte, they have some of those quips in those movies, and I do like the interplay between the actors when they're given these movies, which as they're delivered, I mean, that's really, they do the setup right for the line, and then Harry delivers it, or somebody else delivers the line, and that's an art. That's timing. That's an art. You got to get it right. And you're telling me that Clint usually gets it on one take, or very efficient, right?
Yeah, he's an amazing film director, filmmaker, and talent. Yes.
And one of the terrible things about police movies and police shows is sometimes police officers want to copy and say those things, and to the great frustration of people who become administrators and have to deal with it, right? So, there are a lot of guys. I can admit this, and then we'll go to commercial break. There were guys that I worked with that I didn't want to supervise. And just because I go, I'm going to have to call that guy in and talk to him about what he's saying all the time. But we are up to our break. Martine, are we ready for our little commercial break?
There's only one location on the internet where you can get it all. Movie, TV, and comic industry. News and rumor analysis. Official scoops from Geekosity magazine. Reviews. And interviews. So, when you need it to be Sunday, there's only one place to go, mate. Pop Culture Minefield. Well, they're always talking nerdy nerd stuff. Right, jog on then.
Welcome back to Morning Coffee with the Chief. I'm your host, Patrick Jordan, here on Pop Culture Minefield. You can catch us every Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on YouTube and or Rumble. Do me a favor, make sure you like the video, comment, and share with a friend. Welcome back, guys. And,
Thank you.
Hey,
so Dirty Hair, I'll go ahead, Mike. Do you have any comment on saying things that you shouldn't say? Do you ever get disciplined for saying something you shouldn't say? Or
well, we always have funny lines.
say it again?
There's always funny lines, especially if you're writing someone a ticket. You had to get some humor into it. One of the things, you could run up on the car as fast as you can. Quick. Give me your driver's license registration. What's the matter? You're such a damn hero. I figured I'd have to write the ticket as fast as I could. Once you had them laughing, they didn't complain so much.
I will say, Mike and I both worked West Hollywood, Kevin, and the situations that people get themselves into in Hollywood, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, is decidedly much more unique than many of the other areas that I worked during my career. I did 11 years at West Hollywood, and some of the things that people get themselves into, and then the reaction of the deputy sheriffs. But go ahead, Mike. Or go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, I want to just say, Deputy Mike Ascolese, you've been a friend of mine for, I want to say close to 30 plus years. But I met Mike on, I think it was Sunset Boulevard by the Roxy or one of those places. What a gem of a human being this man really is. I mean, if you ever have to be stopped by anybody and you want a memory, this is the guy. He brings humor to the moment. You end up loving this guy no matter what. And maybe that's why we become good friends for all these years. He's got just a great sense of presence and the human condition. He understands both sides of the fence. He's not just treating you like an officer, uniformed and that, in that box. He steps outside of that box and he makes it right because he's got a great moral compass. So, Mike, thank you so much for being my best friend for that many years. I love you, brother. Good to see you too.
Well, Mike and I have been friends for a long time, and I will say, like when you start going up the ranks, and I promoted not long after working with Mike, right? Maybe a few years, and suddenly you become sir. You go from being Pat to sir.
Yeah.
And Mike was always, that when you start going, particularly you start getting higher, people pull away. They don't treat you the same.
Yeah.
And Mike always did. He always treated me the same. We were always still Pat and Mike, although he would call me sir.
Yeah.
And no matter how many I said, hey, Mike, you can call me Pat, he would still call me sir. Respectful.
Yeah.
So obviously, I like Mike, and I thought, God, I need to bring some new blood on my show. And I know somebody that would be good. And I knew Mike would be good. Because he's proven to be that. He's very diligent and researching the movies, and he has some connections to Hollywood. I wasn't aware of all this stuff.
Do you know about his mom?
Yeah, she was like a casting
She was
agent
a
or
dancer in one of the greatest films ever made, West Side Story.
West Side Story. Yeah.
That's Hollywood 2.0.
My first introduction to Jets and the Sharks, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I thought the
Tony
gangs
Finer
were all about when I went to LA. They'd all be dancing on the streets.
Yep.
No, that's not what happens.
To Tony Finer, Mike's mom, we miss you as well. Thank you for the entertainment for all the years.
Okay, so back to the movie, guys, and so Clint has been chastised, and the first assassination attempt is by the gangsters. So the gangsters want to get Clint because they killed his boss. Now I'm sorry, I think a lot of gangsters, unless they put a hit on Clint, really just want to see who's moving up to take the lead, right? I don't think they want to put themselves at risk going after a cop, but sometimes they do, and here's Clint, and he's now going to get pursued by these guys who have a lot of ammunition or hardware, and so I'm surprised at how he gets away with it. So, but part of this scene, and I'm looking at it from a cop standpoint, right? And I see the bad guys, and I know they do it for blocking and for scene purposes, but they're all walking together, like right next to each other, as they're looking for Clint, and I'm thinking, God, these guys are bunching. They're perfect for Clint. That's why Clint gets to shoot them all, because they're all stupid, right? But so they chase him down, and he ends up bailing on his car, and they follow him, and he ends up killing all three gangsters. But all I can say is this guy, they're bunching up. And the other thing I really want to talk about, and Mike can add about this, is we carried revolvers, and nowadays we all carry automatics. And if you watch Clint during all of his movies as he carries a revolver, and he's going to switch to an automatic later in this movie, but he carries these things called speedy loaders. Mike, you want to take a shot at explaining a speedy loader and how Harry's able to load quickly?
The speedy loader was a cylindrical plastic device that held 6 rounds. At least we carried 6 shooters. And once you open the cylinder of the gun and turn it upside down, the empty shells fall out. You just push the speedy loader onto the cylinder, shut it, and you're ready to go right away. And you don't have to worry about anything. It's very quick, and we always practiced it. And Eastwood's character always carried 3 speedy loaders. That was a big deal in one of the first Dirty Harry movies, Magnum Force. They talked about that. So it's very quick, and you can see that the actor has learned to count his rounds.
Yeah,
and that's really important. You really got to know how many rounds you fired off.
Yeah, that's true. And when you start shooting in the academy, you do a week of shooting, right? Just a full week. And if you're starting with a revolver, you're loading, you're shooting, dumping, loading. And I could do that motion today, and because the muscle memory is there, because I did it thousands of times, right? And most people, when they see Clint Eastwood, they don't know what a speedy loader is, but he's quick, right? He's quick with it. So he had to practice with that, and that's part of what an actor has to do, right, Kevin? If they're using like a gun, they're doing this, you have to practice to get good at it, so you can show that when you were doing Full Metal Jacket, you had to practice what the Marines did. You had to practice with their weaponry, just so you knew how to carry it, you knew how to shoot it, so you looked authentic, right?
Yeah, there's a history to when you're working with props. You need to know what that prop is and how it performs, and become adept with it. Yeah, absolutely. It's part of the research, it's part of the work, and it's part of the parlance to let others see that you've done your homework, and that they don't get distracted by, oh, he doesn't know how to do that, really, and then all of a sudden you lose your audience. So yeah.
And when you did
you don't want to Baldwin it.
Go ahead.
You don't want to Baldwin it
That's
Oh,
right. Wow.
Alec the Shooter Baldwin, right? And I guess maybe I don't know if you want to be critical, Kevin, but when I was listening to as a chief, you become a process guy, right? Everybody's got to follow the process. Everybody's got to follow the policy, and you're looking for when they don't follow the policy. Did that contribute to what happened, right?
Yeah,
So as
exactly.
I listened to what was going on set there, now when I retired, I had 1,200 people that worked for me, 6 sheriff stations, 6 captains, a couple commanders, and you're looking at, well, are they keeping the skill sets up to speed? One of the first things I did was make sure everybody was trained on the policies for wildland fires, because we just had Woolsey out here where a lot, it was terrible. And I had all these stations were adjacent to the foothills, and so I just want to make sure everybody understood the policy, everybody understood what they had to do, everybody understood how they had to do it, and when you look at the shooting with Alec Baldwin, it's like it doesn't sound like they were following the safety protocols. It doesn't sound like they did standard practices that were part of the industry, and people died. So clearly, there's a civil remedy there, and potentially a criminal liability. And that's what I was looking at and that's the way I end up looking at these things. Okay, so this is a production. They got rules that they have to follow, and they didn't follow the rules, and it was grossly negligent, right? And so somebody got hurt. Am I right on that, Kevin?
I think you are. Anytime we've worked with firearms, especially, there is a second and third and fourth. You pay attention, people. We've already heard some of these disasters with Bruce Lee's child, and there was a series called Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, where something stupid kind of happened as well. And stupid, yeah, it happens. But you try to prevent them as best you can. You hope that you don't deviate from policy. And I understand when men get around firearms, how much fun it is. You're out in the desert and you want to set up bottles and you want to play. But people, you've got to pay attention, and you pay attention to the policy, and you don't deviate, because that's when somebody or something tragic can happen, as it did in Rust. And that beautiful woman has been taken away from her family, her loves, and vice versa. There's no return on that payment, and unfortunately, Alec is going to be he's the ship's captain on that boat, and hopefully we've learned again. But why do we keep having to repeat history? We just need to be better. We really do.
Yeah, usually I don't want to. Usually it's arrogance that causes us to move away from policies, and because when I was debating with deputies at times, why do we have to do this? And I particularly officer safety thing. I said we learn officer safety rules on the shoulders of people who have been murdered or experienced tragic situations in the past. So how about we go along with those rules for now? Because there really is no reason for deviating from the practices that we have in place. They're designed to save your life and minimize the death of others if possible. And so we do that every day as a course of our duties. But it's really about keeping people proficient and adhering to policies. Mike, I mean, you probably had this beat in your head by sergeants and lieutenants your whole career. Do you agree?
I do agree. The one thing, and I squawk about this all the time, there wasn't enough training. And I know the guys in service felt we had too much. We didn't, especially gun safety. Yeah. It really had to get drilled into you and continue to be drilled into you. But we always had to work, and we never had time to get away for a training session. And so those qualities, as you went longer on the department, they did diminish, whether you want to admit it or not.
No, they did.
It really made a big difference. We were talking about Eastwood. If you're watching the scenes and you were talking about how tall the gentleman is, he's actually using that gun one-handed, a 44 Magnum. That's enough to
which is unrealistic. Arm. It's unrealistic.
Yeah. But for him, he made it look small. So the character had its own takeaway or its own way of doing things that wouldn't have been taught. We would have been taught two-handed, and your gun barrel is always where your eyesight's going and how you move.
So I guess I got to
things
do a
on.
defund the police rant, Mike, because you brought it up. You know, one of the first casualties of a defund the police movement is your training budget. That's the first thing that goes away because it's the most liquid. You know, if you lay off people, people lose their jobs. So as I'll tell you this as a chief, the first thing you do is you cut supply budgets and you cut training budgets so that you keep people working, which means you're not shooting as much. And I'll tell the story and we'll move back on the movie. I was a chief and I went to shoot, right? So chief, once you hit lieutenant, you only have to qualify. So you don't get to go do the week of shooting, which I always loved. And so you would think that your skill sets would diminish, but to Mike's point, I had a lot of shooting because we used to have to qualify every month, and then it went to every 4 months, right? And so I did a lot of shooting as a young deputy, and I was a good shot. I wasn't the best shot, but I had done a lot, and so I'm in the range thing, and we had these shooting ranges which were trailers, so they shrink down the target basically. And shorten the distance, and then they put it in the back of a tractor trailer thing, and you shoot there. That's your range. Unfortunately, we just had a tragedy because they didn't maintain one right, and some guys got hurt in a range. And next to me were 2 patrol people who were shooting. So I'm an executive. I'm in an office. I'm not chasing bad guys. I'm not doing any of that. I'm getting paper cuts, you know, and that kind of thing, right? And I'm the only one who qualified. I shot. They didn't qualify. I qualified, and it just told me right there and then that we weren't investing in enough training because our folks didn't qualify the first time around, and they had to stay until they qualified. I just did my one relay and got the heck out and went back to my fighting over paperwork, right? So, but hey, thanks for talking about speedy loaders and proficiency because it is important, and people don't understand what it takes for an actor to be proficient, but also for law enforcement to be proficient. So the next one, though, we're coming up on your greatest scene here, Kevin. It's the next one. It's Kevin dies. So this is where Clint does you in, right? And so this is his second assassination attempt.
We don't have that.
You don't have that one?
Oh,
this is the flaming car.
This is the fun part, Mark.
The flaming car.
The flaming
car.
Flaming car. Yeah.
No.
Oh man.
Well, let me.
Wait. We got one thing about the scene.
Yeah.
One thing about the scene, because Kevin's in it, and he's teaching us all about Molotov cocktails and the fact that he's not really that good a thrower. He was wearing a members only jacket. He was the last member. I mean, give me a break.
Yeah, that's old. Well, here's what I thought. You got it, Martin?
No.
Okay. Well,
it wasn't in the mail.
Oh, I didn't. I must have missed it. Okay, well, so this is what happens. So Kevin and his buddies go to take out Clint, and first they're using clubs to break the windows, and then they're going to throw Molotov cocktails into his car. Now, the first thing I thought about the scene, Kevin, is when you're hitting his car, you're driving up there to Clint's car. Well, why didn't Clint just stop and shoot him? There's a lot of things about the scene that bothered me.
Yeah.
And why wouldn't you go get some guns,
Right.
I mean, it is San Francisco. They're probably available. And I thought this is a very juvenile attempt at an assassination. And that's how I felt about it. And, but then you're right. You break the windows and you throw the Molotov cocktails. One of them breaks in the back of Clint's car, but one of them doesn't. And Clint manages to get out of the car and throw it into your car. It lights on fire. And then you guys crash into the ocean, right?
Yeah.
That's the scene, and you're gone. You're dead now. You drowned is probably the assumption, right?
Yep.
But I wanted to bring up, pop culture. Culture does influence scripts, and real life stories do influence scripts. And you always wonder where these writers get these ideas, right? And there are times when law enforcement are targeted off duty. And I think I sent you a picture of an LAPD detective who was murdered. Martin, can you put that up? Detective Williams. And it's a pretty sad story. So this guy he was working on a murder case. It was some gangsters. There he is right there. It was it's Detective Williams. I think he was out of Valley Division or one of the valleys. And he was actually going to pick up his son from preschool. I don't know if you remember this, Mike. It was in the early 80s.
Oh, I remember it.
Yeah, and he was going, and he saw it coming. So the guy that he was going to testify against, hired somebody to kill this detective, and he followed him to his son's preschool. He was picking his son up from preschool. The detective saw what was happening, and he only had enough time to shield his son, and they shot him and killed him right there in front of his son. And and I wanted to bring that up because we watched these movies and we said, oh, this is not realistic, and maybe Molotov cocktails aren't realistic, but it is realistic that every now and then you get targeted because of who you are as a police officer, many times on duty, but sometimes off duty, and sometimes in a very personal way, they're targeting you because you're the guy that's going to testify and put somebody away for the rest of their life. Now, they did figure that case out. They did put those guys in prison for a long time. I think they had a parole hearing on one of them recently, and of course it was rejected. But it's an example where writers do take license. They do take what's going on in popular culture society, and that does influence scripts, Kevin, right? That's accurate, right? Have you written a script
so,
yourself?
Yeah.
And
no, yeah, we art imitates life, life imitates art.
yeah, that's well said. And so, and I just want to bring it home. We're having a little bit of fun here, but I do want to bring it home that it's not just fun here for Clint. This stuff does happen. It is real life. I'm sorry I missed out on that clip there, Kevin. So I will have to definitely bring you back for um, your role with Charles Bronson there, Death Wish 2, because I owe you a death scene, right?
All right, thank you. Yes,
I owe
please.
you a death scene.
You
And
know,
so let's go ahead.
I want to jump in too because we live in the times, our culture and our world is deteriorating. Defund the police and all the nonsense that goes with it. But from my family to all of your families, everybody in uniform who has played a part in keeping our freedoms, I can't thank you enough. And to the audience and to our babies, Fueled by the Fallen's motto I share with everyone is let's remind our children of 7 forgotten words. Yes, sir. No, sir. Please and thank you. These are things that we were brought up on. We open doors for ladies. We make a difference by being respectful. And when you see a cop in uniform, a military person in uniform, we call it the thumbs up campaign. You extend your thumb at that officer, and that's your way of saying, I respect what it is you do. And when I give you respect, I will receive respect. So teach our babies well. They're the ones to carry the flag next for the next generations. And we have certainly lost our way, but it takes us as neighbors to say, we are in this one together. And for those who are targeting police officers, damn it, stop your nonsense. Please stop your nonsense. I don't want to go to any more funerals. I am tired. I am on my way out, and I've got a 500 billion year dirt nap coming my way. But until then, stop your nonsense, people. Stop. All right, enough.
Well, I appreciate the sentiment. And, the other thing, I forgot to comment on one of your, when you said your dad took you to the movies. My dad took me to see Tora, Tora, Tora. And then he took me to see the movie Midway. And because he loved that stuff. And you know what, if you got a son, dads, sometimes moms regulate what they want their kids and husbands to watch, but sometimes you got to go see those masculine movies, right, with your son.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like it was a good experience for you there, Kevin, and it certainly was with me as well. And I do appreciate you honoring the men and women in law enforcement. One of the reasons why I do this show is to get another narrative out there. And hopefully on my next show, I got another show in development. I'll be able to expand and address some of the dishonesty that's being spread about law enforcement that started probably the last 15 years. So
we are also in development of a show. I have a creative team, and we are looking at doing a show called Range Time with Rafterman. And a lot of these conversations that you and I and Deputy Mike Ascolese are having are really part of the foundation, the core of the show. So please keep and stay in my radar. We have lots to talk about.
Well, you know how to get hold of me. Just contact my friend Michael there via Idaho, and you get the Calabasas. Are you still in California, Kevin?
No, I left there 9 years ago. I had a triple bypass. My wife escorted me out of the city. Enough. And I now live in Las Vegas. So when you come to Las Vegas, I got some lobster bisque. I'll sit you down, you break bread with me, and we will have a good time. Trust
Well,
me.
that's a date. My wife always listens to my show, so I'm sure she can motivate us to go to Las Vegas to meet you now, right? So
Good morning, wife.
yeah, she's my number one fan and my number one critic. She helped me improve my shtick and my delivery, right? Anyway, because she used to help do productions for commercials, so she had a little bit of hand in the business there.
Yep.
Now she does finances for commercials. Anyway, so the next scene is Clint has been sent out of town. All these guys are trying to kill him, and he's creating mayhem because they come out on the losing end. I mean, if you actually do a body count, Clint's got quite a few.
Yeah, he
It was
does.
9 or 10 at this
Yeah.
point, right? If you're counting. And I mean, I would be a little concerned if I was a chief, as their chief as well. Okay, you killed 9 guys in 1 week. Okay, this is a problem. This is a problem. And so they put him on instead of him being on vacation, because vacation didn't work. He ended up killing 6 people while he was on vacation, right?
Right.
So they decided to send him out of town on a murder investigation, and it's a legitimate lead. They don't, they just don't send him out in the woods looking for shell casings. It's a legitimate lead. They're following up, doing some background on the first victim. And this is where he really starts to run into Sandra Locke. But of course, he has to have his scene to establish who he is to the locals there. And they have the robbery scene. So, he gets there. And as he's pulling into this town, San Paulo, I think is what they call the town.
Yep.
I think it's a fictional town. And although it looked a lot like Carmel area, I don't know where they actually shot that particular scene and those scenes. But so the robbery occurs, and Clint ends up in a chase with this guy where the guy's he's on a meter maid's cycle, and Clint jumps in the bus, and a little bit of comic release going on here. All the old people are in the senior citizen bus, and they're enjoying the chase, right? And this is classic Clint Eastwood. I'm going to get him. He bites into this, and he's going to do whatever it takes to take him down. But this is establishing him as who he is, the big shot cop, but he's Dirty Harry, takes no guff, gets it done, whatever it takes. And he's being introduced to the town, literally. What do you think, Mike?
Well, the reason he got caught is because that's a Honda instead of a Harley. That's a Honda CX500. But it was a great scene. A little surprising that Eastwood's character doesn't realize the people are in the back of the bus right away. You'd think getting on, he might have taken a look to the left before he sat down. But they were cheering him on. They were pretty good. One of the older men that was on there had a line getting off. Used to be on Rawhide with Clint Eastwood. So, again, someone else had spent a lot of time and knew him for quite a while. But a long scene, and it sure makes you want to stay in shape for running, because he chased that guy for quite a while before he got to that bus.
Yeah, I think the last movie, number 3, where he's got the female partner, is that classic foot chase where he's chasing. He said, "This guy's a rabbit," and he punches him in the face to knock him out to identify who he is. But it does establish who he is. I mean, of course, he captures the guy, and the guy he shot the officer in the face. I thought the officer was dead in that scene, and then you see him later. He winged him in the head, which. And the officer becomes his confidant and gives him information throughout as he does his investigation. But it does establish, the anti-hero Clint Eastwood in the town of Sao Paulo. And here's the chief. He's already not happy. You've just arrived here and you've already blaming him for the havoc. I mean, I would be tickled pink if I was the chief of some town and some detective from out of town caught the robbery suspect who shot my guy. I don't think I would be upset by that at all. But, it has to fit with the conflict between the establishment law enforcement, meaning the executive, and Clint Eastwood's anti-hero character. Right, Kevin?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Did you ever work with the chief in this?
I beyond this, no.
Beyond this? Yeah, I know, because I've seen him in a lot of stuff, too. I can't think of what it is now, but... He's a longtime character actor
Pat
as
Hingle?
well.
Yeah.
Is that his name? Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a longtime character
Pat
actor. He's
Hingle.
been around.
Yeah,
there-
he
it's
did.
fun to revisit films and shows we've grown up with, and you look back and your jaw drops and you see, oh my God, is that really Olivia Newton-John? Is that really so and so? Yeah, it's. There was a famous film called Marty with Ernest Borgnine, and
Yeah.
if you watch, there's a crowd that takes place on the street, and George Maharis said that was my very first movie. He was an extra in that film, and then you realize that he went on to do Route 66 and all the great television he did right after the Ed Sullivan Show. We'd sit down on Sunday nights and watch together.
I want to tell you, Mike does really good research on these movies, and I had Mike on for Magnum Force. And as I said, they always have sex scenes in this movie. And Mike identified all the people in the sex scene, and one of them was Suzanne Summers. So I want to appreciate Mike for his
Wow.
hard work and diligence and making sure he got all the people right in that show. I'm sure he had to flip back and forth to make sure he got all the faces right. But I appreciate that, Mike. Go ahead.
This actor's name, it's Pat Hingle.
Yeah.
This guy's awesome. And he did Hang 'em High and he did Gauntlet with Eastwood. But let me tell you something. Back in the day, he was in On the Waterfront, Splendor in the Grass. We're talking about some classic,
Wow.
fantastic movies.
Did he play
He
a
was in 'em.
longshoreman and on the waterfront? Or no, he played the
I-
dad.
I
Was he the
believe
dad
so.
of the love interest? He might have been. I'll have to look at
I
that.
haven't watched it for a while. but,
Well, I'm trying now.
He did
Because I
Normal
love
Way.
On Waterfront. I mean, Carl Malden was the priest, and
Marlon
obviously
Brando, obviously.
Marlon Brando, and then
Eva Marie. Was it Eva Marie Saint?
and then his brother was the great character act or the great method actor
Rod Steiger.
Raj Steiger, yeah,
Yeah.
who I love. I want to do the movie in the heat of the night. I haven't done that cop movie yet. I'm just looking for the right guest because that has a lot of social commentary that
Yeah, it does.
you can make in that movie. And but yeah, so it's good, and you can make a living if you're a good character actor in Hollywood, right? You can make a
Absolutely,
living for
you can.
yourself.
Yeah. I often tell actors, don't be worried about being typecast. It's one of the great attributes of going to work. Clint Eastwood is typecast. Let's face it, people.
Yeah.
Come on.
Just be typecast as the right
Yeah.
character.
If you're typecast, they understand you. If they understand you, they can hire you. If they're hiring you, you're making a paycheck.
You know what? I use Mike and I can both attest to this. You pull somebody over. Okay, where do you work? Well, I'm an actor. Okay, where are you waiting table at, dude? And right. Okay, where's your real job at? Because there's a lot of starving actors out there, and it's not to denigrate actors and actresses.
Yeah.
It's just the reality of Hollywood, right?
Yeah.
And so if you're making a living off a character actor, that's fantastic.
Yeah,
So.
it is. Yeah, it is.
Okay, so let's get to the road to revenge, and this is where we see a lot more of Sandra Locke. She's returned to the town. She's taken a job in San Paulo where she was assaulted 10 years. Her and her sister were assaulted 10 years earlier. You do see a scene where her sister's in a catatonic state from the time of this assault. She was a teenager at the time. And Sandra Locke, she got a taste of revenge when she killed the first guy. Now she is pursuing the rest of the gang or the rest of the group of the people that committed these atrocious acts against her. And here's the second one. And of course, he's got some quip remarks for her, but she already knows what she wants to do. He's out there fishing on the water, and she ends up shooting him, one in the groin, one in the head. And she's using a little. Did you catch the gun she's using, Mike? That's the kind of gun I carried as a backup. I carried a little 5-shot 38 in a pocket holster.
It's a 38. It looks bigger how they're filming it, but I believe she's only got a 38.
Yeah, it's just a 38 and it's a very small gun. But I carried that. I just had a shroud on my trigger so that it could slip out of my pocket. Kevin, you have to think of those things when you're doing. You don't want it to get hooked up in your pocket, right? So
Right.
there are little small 38s like that have metal shrouds that cover the hammer, so that it slides in and out easy. And most of the guys that I worked carried 2 guns. Probably carried 2 guns because, you never know. If you lose one or you're running out of ammunition in your middle of a fight, there it is right there. And you like to have 2 guns. But it just reminded me of my backup. Mike, did you carry a backup, Mike?
Yeah, I carried I can't think of which model it was, but it was a shrouded 38 5-shot.
Yeah, probably very similar to mine.
I
I think
just
that
can't
was
remember
pretty
which model.
standard for most of us. I carried mine in a pocket. A lot of guys carried it on a holsters, but I was willing to run and a leg holster, and it just didn't work for me carrying it in a leg holster. You could lose it a lot easier. It kind of threw off your stride if you're running. So carried in a pocket.
So the one thing in West Hollywood, and we won't use his name, a lot of us did carry that shrouded 5-shot. I carried mine in my front pocket, but one particular trainee had one in his back pocket and accidentally shot himself through and through the button into his leg.
I did.
So yeah, you have to be careful where you put the gun.
How did he get it cocked for that to happen? That's crazy. So I carried mine in my pocket because it's just you can't keep taking it out of your back pocket to put in your front pocket when you're sitting down. It get pretty uncomfortable. Plus, it was easier to get to with your weak hand if you had to. And that's the other thing. We did practice. I don't know, Kevin, if you ever been to a range where you had to practice shooting with your weak hand. So if you're right-handed, you shoot with your left hand because you never know. You could.
Yep.
And I was at a situation where we had a deputy got shot. And it was in the lobby of Carson Sheriff Station. I was the watch commander, and he actually got shot. He was turned sideways to the shooter, and the shooter hit him in his left arm. It went through his arm, went through his pen set on his shirt, and then it went into his right arm. So both of his arms were taken out. He stands up to defend himself, and he couldn't use either one of his arms. Fortunately, there was a deputy saw what was happening. He came out from behind the bulletproof glass and took on the suspect and saved the deputy. But you can get hit with an arm, and that's why you carry a second weapon, and that's why you train with your weak hand. Just because you combat shooting, you never know what's going to happen if you're in combat, right?
Yep. We're on Range Time with Rafterman. We are going to have a segment that offers to the public safety tip of the day, so to speak, how to use those arms. And would love to have you a part of these conversations. I truly would.
Sure, and I think now that the Supreme Court has expanded the right for concealed weapons permit, it's really I'll do my public service announcement for the day. Don't just get a gun and carry a gun. Go get the safety training, train regularly on that weapon, and particularly learn how to store it safely. Practice reloading that gun because it's no good to you if you got a revolver, shoot 5 rounds or 6 rounds, and then you're empty. You don't know how to reload or you're panicked.
Yeah.
And probably the most important thing, buy some insurance that covers this.
I was about to bring that up. I'm actually a member of USCCA. I brag about this company. I get to go to sleep with a peace of mind because I'm not that proficient, and I need the support, the backup, and that peace of mind. So
you can do everything right and shoot somebody and still get sued, and you want the support of an insurance policy. And we got the 70s fan who's got his own podcast on Pop Culture Minefield. Just joined us today. One day, I'm going to ask him if we could do a rock and roll podcast where we talk about the sex, drugs, and rock and roll of the Sunset Strip. I'm going to challenge him to do something like that. We'll bring up a couple cops. We'll give our interpretation of what happened on the famed Sunset Strip with the Roxy, the Whiskey A Go Go, Gazzari's, the Rainbow Room, or the Rainbow, the Roxy, all of that stuff, right? That used to exist.
Don't forget the Starwood.
The Starwood, yeah.
You got Van Halen came out of the Starwood.
The Starwood, even the Troubadour down there on Santa Monica Boulevard, where a lot of the folk singers came out of it. But I digress. Let us get back to the movie. So, Road to Revenge. If she shoots this guy, and now she's on the road. She's gonna 70s fan. I would love to do that, and I could bring in one of my road managers and friends who used to hang out there all the time. And if you do that, I will tell my Sunset Strip story on New Year's Eve, where I thought I was going to lose my life. 70s rock fan. So we'll have to. That'll have to be a special show. Maybe we can advertise it. But yeah, definitely. And I was in charge of the Sunset Strip for a while. I had the skirmish line as a lieutenant. I cleaned out the Sunset Strip because the Key Club had a shooting. It was a wild. The couple times I worked there, it can be a wild place to work. So she's going after these guys, and they didn't really have the sex scene in this movie. I noticed. I go, I don't know if you were disappointed by that, Mike. You missed your sex scene, right? No.
Well, they did knock boots. They did knock boots, but they didn't make a big deal out of it. It was
Yeah,
just
yeah,
a
it wasn't
quickie.
wasn't as high profile. And I go, I bet you Mike's going to be disappointed. Anyway, so and Clint is now he's met her too on the road, and Clint is starting to pull this stuff together. One in the groin, one in the head. Now there's a murder in San Paulo. One in the groin, one in the head. He knows not only are his other victims going to be up there, but the suspect is there. The person who killed the person in San Francisco is also there, and he notices a picture, and I think I need to hit Mike up on this. He noticed there's a picture in the chief's office of the victim, and in the picture is a bunch of other people, and many of them are future victims. And as we know, when you're looking for somebody, what do, Mike? You look at their associates, right? You start tracking down their associates, which is what Clint's doing, right?
Correct. Yeah, it was a perfect way to do it. It was filmed great. Even the fact that at one point the picture disappears. It was taken out of the office, so I actually made it more neon light on it to begin with. But it was as a detective a great way to do it.
And it was known associates, right? That's how we do it. What are the bad guys known? What are the possible known associates of the victim? Because you get into the victim's lives, and that usually tells you, why they're being targeted and what happened. And it also sends Clint a message that he's in hostile territory with the chief. There's a reason why the chief is not acting aggressively on this stuff, and the plot line, as it moves forward, it's because his own son is involved. But Sandra Locke's character is working through these things, and but Clint ends up sleeping with the serial killer, because that's what she is. Technically, she's a serial killer. He ends up having a relationship, but he's also figuring it out. I think he sees her car at one of these places, and he's figured out that she's probably the suspect, right? Right, Mike?
Yeah, I think with the groin shot and everything, the high probability that it's going to be a female. He did spot the car at one point. He spots it in her garage when he leaves in the morning, and interesting how they did it and how he sort of stayed away from it. He was waiting to get all his blocks in a row and get it all done.
Now Red here, and I'm looking for her name here, and I think she did a fantastic job as an actress here. Is it Betty Ford? Is that who that is? And but she was fantastic. I think her character was despicable, which is what you wanted, right? She's a good character actor. You didn't like her at all. She's the one who set up Sandra Locke's character and her sister to be sexually assaulted. And she's the one pulling all the folks together. She's the one that's realized that they're being targeted. And once Clint takes who he thinks the primary bad guy away, Martin, you got a name for us?
Yes, Audrey Neenan.
Say that again?
Audrey Neenan.
Audrey Neenan, that's who this is. Yeah, and I thought she did a great job in this movie. I don't know, Kevin, what'd you think? Is acting craft? What do you think?
Oh, absolutely. She's a stunning talent, and again, Clint has an eye. His casting director's name is Marion Doherty, and she is so talented at casting. She knows when to pick out a certain actor for a certain role, and Clint absolutely trusts her. I remember I got a phone call to meet Clint down at his bungalow at Malpauso Productions. I walked in and I said hello. He came out. We spent 10 minutes talking, and he said, I'll see you on Sudden Impact. And I walked away going, I didn't even audition. So he trusts in Marion Doherty.
Well, I don't recall what else I think I saw that she was in like a period piece where she might have played like a queen or something like that. And so, but I don't think I recall seeing her in other things that I could just pick out. But I just thought she kind of all the bad guys. I mean, I thought our key bad guy played a good villain as well. Paul Drake, I think he played Mick. Yeah, I think he did pretty good and played the crazy guy. But if I had to, pick the two, which one was better, I would have to go with I'd have to go with the lady here on this one. I think you didn't like her, and
Yeah.
that was her job. Okay, you got to make sure they don't like me, and you didn't like her at all. And right to the end, and she was defiant, kind of a jerk right to the end. And you know what? I have arrested a lot of people like that, and Mike is the same way. They're defiant at law. They're going to do whatever they want. They don't care. They don't adhere to social norms, and she plays that. In my mind, she plays that character very, very well. So in between some of these scenes, though, we have some important stuff that I didn't really pull up into a scene, but I need to talk about, and that is Horace comes to visit Clint, and she's the last actor we talked about. She pulled all the bad guys together. Now they know they're getting hunted, and they know Clint Eastwood's there, and they make an attempt on Clint Eastwood's life, but it ends up being Horace who pays the price, and that's the great actor Andrew. Let's see, where's Andrew's? It's Andrew, right? Andrew Popwell, right? Yeah, I think that's
Albert.
it. Huh? How does he say his last name?
Albert.
Albert. Oh, Albert.
Albert Popwell.
And I like him, and of course they use the language. They say "kiss your ass goodbye, Sambo," which is a pejorative term, but it's relatively mild. They could have said a lot of other things in the movie, and do they do that, Kevin? It could be worse and over the top, but they kind of soften the pejorative terms for ratings. I mean, why would you know what I mean?
Well, with Clint, again, it's about the underlying context and the performances that he tries to shine the light on. It's not so much the dialogue per se, but he wants that context, that canvas painted in that fashion. So, it's like most comedians. It's who was it? There are some comedians that don't use profanity at all and are absolutely stunning funny, and yet there are those comedians who use only butts, and you kind of look at that and you just say, why are you relying on that? Where's your talent? And I think that's who Mr. Eastwood is in his filmmaking.
Well, I'm glad I asked that question, because I mean, now I don't think they would slow and they would use the N-word or other really pejorative terms, and Sambo is still offensive, but it's kind of a softer kind of offensive.
Yeah.
Not something I don't think I ever heard that growing up, and I grew up in Detroit, so but you knew what it meant when he said it, right? And it was pejorative, and he was going to be killed, and Harry does find him, and the interesting thing about all of the Dirty Harry movies is his first partner is really the only one that ever survived, right? I don't know if you watched them all. It was Chico was the name of it. So he had a Latino partner first, right? And on and off he had DiGiorgio, which is Robert Mitchum. John Mitchum is his name, even another great character actor, right? Robert Mitchum's brother, John Mitchum. And then he had the female partner, right?
Deli.
Yeah, and then and now Horace is his partner, and he's killed. So four of his 5 partners in these movies have been killed, right? So, and that's why they call him Dirty Harry, and that's why he can't keep a partner, because they always get killed. But the other thing on this, and I don't know if you guys are. I don't know are you guys fans of the John Wick movies that come on?
Yes.
Yeah, I personally am. And, I met Keanu once. He's a tremendous human being. Oh, my God. Down to earth, like you can't believe, and very, very quiet unto himself. But, yeah, John Wick is exceptional work. Go ahead. You take it away,
Well,
Chief.
they hurt his dog, Meatball, in this scene. You end up finding, not in this scene, but later on in the movie, you find out that Meatball even got hurt, right? And I'm thinking, okay, did John Wick take inspiration from Dirty Harry's movies on his dog getting hurt, and that, what do you think, Mike? Am I reaching there?
Well, you left a little bit out. Hurt. He got castrated. It doesn't get worse.
Oh, did they?
than
Oh,
that.
I didn't know that. Oh, poor guy.
They castrated the dog. I was like, holy smokes, man. Meathead was a great character. Eastwood made everything stand out. Everything is so simplistic in the background, but he really made that character stand out for the few minutes he was in the movie. And so you were hurt that the dog had been injured so badly. You felt for the animal. But Keanu Reeves and John Wick, maybe they borrowed a little bit from the storyline there. But
Well,
it's a great
that's the
series.
first thing I thought of. I go, and that's writers do kind of steal ideas from other shows, right? You see them popping up and go, oh, that's kind of right, Kevin. They kind of.
Yeah, I think it's the evolution of art among us all. What's art society's topic these days, and everybody begins to run around with that play line.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's bring up the next scene, and this is the chief, right? So, and this is when I think obviously I think Clint already knows there's a problem, and I do like the way in terms of their art they link the sister and one of the son of the police chief together, that they're both in catatonic states, from largely driven by this event that they were both involved in. One as the perpetrator and one as the victim. But she goes to cross this guy off her list, and she sees her. I think she sees her sister in this young man. Right? He's not the predator that she was hoping to do away with, and this is where you find out why the chief is not so aggressive and dealing with these punks, right? Because his son was involved in the crime, and he's obviously protected them. Something he goes into a speech he regrets. But yeah, speak about that art, Kevin. Linking the sister and this young man, the son of the chief, together with the same kind of similarity in terms of their outcome from this horrible event that happened 10 years earlier.
Mike, you jump in here and give me your perspective on this.
Well, you got the victims of a double rape. I think his character was pushed by the other guys, especially the female. I believe her character's name was Ray. Yeah. She really pushed the whole thing to begin with, even nudging Sandra Locke's character and even coming to the quote party because she didn't want to come at first. As far as this guy going to a catatonic state, also, I thought it was unusual but very believable. He just couldn't live with the guilt. At that point, I think Sandra Locke realized how much the cop had covered up. The chief really had a big part in this rape charge not going forward. And you'd think she'd have been mad at him also. I mean, she was a good detective. She tracked everyone down. You think that would have popped up, because at no point in time was there ever an arrest or a trial or anything.
Kevin, what do you think of the art linking the two and the message they're sending there?
I'm stuck between yesteryear and today's contemporary times. And I keep reflecting back on, how can you all do your job so well, and yet you're being interfered with by the system itself at large? In fact, my wife and I are going through something that our jaws dropped. We have people who are forging documents and getting away with it, even though they're confessing to the police. And the police their hands are tied, and nobody's making the laymen of society, the citizens of society, the victims. Nobody's accounting for them any longer because of these stressed avenues we've embarked on. And I think we just need to get back to protecting and serving and allowing you to do your jobs. I was brought up in that framework of, you respect that man in blue. You just do. You don't talk back. And unfortunately, we live in these times where our phone has interrupted us as a society, where we think we can talk back to all of you. And what's your name and what's your badge number? And I'm going to have your job on Monday. And I'm sorry if I seem a little over passionate about it, but again, it's the fabric of our society that you have lent your sacrifices to, and some of the men and women who have fallen because of these sacrifices made. And I so want to inspire tomorrow's youth about getting their act together. And again, please listen to us, the generations that have come before you. we have a pretty good bead on what disciplines are about. I was taught you take your garbage out, you do your homework, and you pay attention, and you respect thy neighbor. Some of these are being lost today because of our phones. Our children are so, this,
Yep.
this, and this. And, I'm suffering, even as a parent, I'm suffering because I look at my own baby and I think you could be so much farther down the line if you would just trust in the parents' information, because we've been there, we've done it. And so my hat off to both of you and everyone who wears the uniform and the badge so proudly. We have lost some dear friends. Mike has introduced me to that lineage, and which is why we build the cars we build. Greatest canvas to expose to our children about the loss and the cost of freedom. So let's pay attention again. Tomorrow is a beautiful day coming up with the sun, and we just need to be better for each one of us.
Well, let me reinforce what you said. There is definitely a concerted effort to reduce the authority of law enforcement and increase the administrative responsibility, which then reduces the effectiveness of law enforcement. But they haven't replaced law enforcement with a workable tool. They say it's treatment, and I think you can look at data to show that that doesn't work. And on my next show, my other show, I'll get a little more in depth in that. But you're absolutely right. And I think we need to place a lot more primacy on the family. We don't do that anymore, and that's why we have this. I think with the scene in this character, this dad probably did instill a sense of right and wrong in his kid, and his kid couldn't handle the fact that he let his dad down, he let himself down, and he eventually committed an act that caused him to be comatose. Now his dad protects him, and we got the bad guys come in because we're running up towards the end, and the bad guys come in, and this is the great actor, or the good character actor, Paul Drake, comes in with two of his cousins, I guess, and they end up shooting the chief of police. They end up killing the chief of police, and they take Sandra Locke, and they're going to reenact what had happened 10 years earlier before they killed her. And of course, they try to kill Harry too. He's been beat up and pushed off a pier. And here's the iconic scene, and this goes to lighting. It goes to the new gun that was introduced when he was shooting with Horace earlier in the movie, and it's the scene of the movie that one of the premier scenes that I remember, and that's him standing on the boardwalk, backlit, and tall, lanky, and his hands are down to his side, and you can see the new gun that he's going to carry. The 44 Automag, which is an impressive gun. I mean, I don't know how good a 44 is for an automatic. I never shot an auto. I just stuck with 9s. But that whole scene where it's like, justice is coming is all I could think about that scene. And that's what justice is coming. I'm coming for you. And you want to talk about that, the art of creating a scene like that and sending a message like that, if you can.
Well, it actually became, I think, the shot, one of the poster pictures of its times. And again, I love the backlit situation and Clint standing there on that boardwalk. And, the Ferris wheel, I think, is in the background. And it's showing us two sides of his personality as well. You have him being the authoritative figure with that badge in tow, and doing the job that needs to be done, no matter what the reason and how it's going to get done, it's going to get done. And yet you have that backdrop of San Francisco or San Jose being its playful area. So you have this conflict of two sceneries going on. One is light and about all of us, and the other one is about a man at night taking care of business.
I didn't remember, so this goes on to where he ends up shooting the two cousins, right? And now he's dealing with Paul Drake, who's got Sandra Locke's character at the top of the roller coaster. And there's another linkage scene. In one scene, you see them chasing her, and she's on the carousel. Yeah. And you notice she ends up by one of the horses that's actually a unicorn. It's got the big old. Well, that's a pretty big spike for that unicorn, right? And I had forgotten that he ends up shooting Paul Drake's character, and it falls down through the glass onto the carousel and gets impaled onto the unicorn. I go, oh, that was really, I've forgotten about that scene when I watched it years ago. I thought it was a really good linkage, and we're going to see it now, and it's kind of like the whole scene is the scene is called. I called this scene because he starts out when he sees Clint coming on the boardwalk. He says, "Holy shit!" And I wrote, "Holy shit, justice." So this is the scene coming, and I just thought all of that whole scene was really the iconic part of the movie. Although I think the Acorn cafe scene was also a really iconic scene, but this is excellent. He's going to save his girlfriend, and his love interest, and there's the gun. Excellent shot. And these guys are thinking, justice is coming. Am I going to survive this? Right? And those are the scenes that I really like in this. These are a couple of the scenes I really like in the movie. This one, and then the unicorn one I thought was pretty cool. What do you think, Mike?
Epic filming. I mean, it was done really, really well. A quick tie-in. It was nice to see Eastwood was able to let her off because Paul Drake's character had used her gun to kill the chief and ended up biting him on the hiney because when the gun was found, it was all on him, and she was able to walk off. And Harry Callahan realizes, yes, I want justice, but she brought her own justice, and I'm going to leave it alone as it is. The real bad guy is gone.
Yeah, he was making a statement by letting her go that justice was done, and it wouldn't serve justice to bring her to trial for these murders. I don't know if a real life Harry Callahan would do that, but he did it in the movie. But what'd you think of the unicorn thing? Kind of good justice there for Mr. Drake, or Mick, his character. Did you see that coming when you saw the carousel scene that he would end up on that unicorn spike?
I didn't realize it was going to be the unicorn, and he damages the work that she's actually trying to rebuild. But you could see he was going to take the long fall off of there. So.
Well, I think this is the fourth installment of Dirty Harry, and I think it is also a real representation of the frustration of crime, as we mentioned earlier in the show, and how people reacted to Dirty Harry as a character. That's why they loved Dirty Harry as the character, and that's why we got one more in the queue that we'll eventually do. And this put Clint Eastwood was already a star, but this just launched him, right, Kevin? This is one of those iconic characters that just can launch a career.
Well, not only that, first off, Clint has been around for how many decades, and secondly, I think some of those pop culture phrases certainly catapulted this film into the limelight. And from me to you, Mr. Eastwood, thank you very, very much for allowing me to be a part of your filmmaking experiences. And you have done so much for my career. In fact, Stanley Kubrick reached out because of 3 films he had seen that I had done. One was obviously Sudden Impact with Eastwood. He's a huge Eastwood fan. Death Wish 2 and Scared Straight, Another Story, where I played a young boy going into prison for his very first time, being raped for cigarettes, and commit suicide by hanging. But it was Eastwood certainly that instigated Mr. Kubrick to reach out and find me, and Chief, to you too as well, and to Deputy Mike Ascolese. Thank you so much for what you do in our city streets, what you have done, and what you continue to do in your philosophies is make a difference for our communities at large. And thank you for this invitation to be with you on Morning Coffee with the Chief.
Well, thank you for coming on again. Here's our guy who's going to get impaled by the unicorn, and then Clint's going to let his girlfriend go here. I'll put Death Wish 2 in the queue if you're willing to come back there, Kevin. And
can we have Deputy Mike Ascolese as our guest as well?
Absolutely.
All right, I'm in. I'm in, sir.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to close off the show here, and stick around for about 5 minutes for a debrief. And thank you so much for joining me on Coffee with the Chief and on Pop Culture Minefield, both on Rumble and YouTube. You can catch us every Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Don't miss our future shows. Thank you so much.